नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, today we are starting new chapter, chapter 86. Arjun kidnaps Subhadra and Krishna blesses his devotees. Text number 1 onwards. Shri Rajo Vacha Brahman Veditum Ichhama Swasaram Ramakrishna Yathopayeme Vijayo Ya Mamasi Tapitamahi. King Parikshit said, "O Brahman, we would like to learn how Arjun married Lord Balram's and Lord Krishna's sister, who was my grandmother." Parikshit Maharaj turns now to the topic of the marriage of Lord Krishna's sister Subhadra. In the opinion of Shirashveda Swami, King Parikshit's question here follows from the previous narration, because Arjuna's winning the hand of Subhadra was just as difficult as a feat as Lord Krishna's retrieving the sons of Devaki from the realm of the dead, since Lord Balram himself opposed Subhadra's marriage to Arjun. Shri Shukavacha Arjunas Tirtha Yatrayam Paryatan Vanim Prabhu Gata Prabhasam Shranon Matuleim Satmana Duryodhanaya Ramastam Dasyati Nachapare Talipsahu Sa Yatir Bhutva Tridandi Dwarakamagat. Shukdev Goswami said, while traveling far and wide, visiting various holy places of pilgrimage, Arjun came to Prabhas. There he heard that Lord Balram intended to give his maternal cousin Subhadra to Duryodhan in marriage, and that no one else approved of this plan. Arjun wanted to marry her himself, so he disguised himself as a renunciant, complete with triple staff, and went to Dwarka. Arjuna's plan for obtaining Subhadra as his wife may have seemed unconventional, but he was not acting without encouragement. In fact, Lord Krishna was his prime co-conspirator. Krishna actually wanted this, and they devised a means. And in Dwarka, most of the members of the royal family, especially Vasudeva, were unhappy about giving their favorite daughter to Duryodhana. So, of course, in Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami didn't go in detail, but in Mahabharata it is mentioned that since Draupadi was married to all the 5 brothers, so there was a deal between all of them. And Vyasadevji himself settled this deal that Draupadi will be with every brother for 2 months a year, and rest of the 2 months she will be alone or whatever she wants to do. And the deal was the king or the brother would be with Draupadi in her palace for those 2 months, and no other brother would be allowed to come in when suppose Yudhishthira Maharaj is with Draupadi, then other 4 brothers cannot come. So it has so happened that once Yudhishthira Maharaj was in Draupadi's palace. And before Yudhishthira Maharaj, it was Arjun who was with Draupadi. So a Brahman came that some thieves are stealing my cows. Is there no Kshatriya who can stop them? And it was Arjun only who was in the palace. Bhima, Nakul, Sahadeva, somehow they were unavailable. So Arjun said, "Yes, I'll come and protect your cows, and I'll bring my Gandhi bow and arrow and come with you." But when he looked for his bow and arrow, he understood, he forgot his bow and arrow in Draupadi's palace. Now there was a dilemma whether he should go in or save this Brahman and ultimately save Yudhishthira Maharaj's name, because he was the king. And also the deal was, if anybody, any brother breaks this rule of not entering Draupadi's palace, then he would have to go for pilgrimage for 1 year. So Arjun said, fine, I'll go for pilgrimage, but right now I have to save this Brahman's cow. So he went into the palace of Draupadi and he entered, and Yudhishthira Maharaj asked him, what happened? And he explained, and he said, I'm here to get my bow and arrow. And he took his bow and arrow and left. And he went after those thieves. He drove them away. He protected Brahman's cows. But then the time came. He said, well, I broke the rule and I have to go for pilgrimage. Yudhishthira Maharaj told him, you didn't break any rule. It was emergency and this and that, but no, rules are rules. Arjun said, I have to go. Okay, he left. And he went by foot. He did not take a chariot. So first he went to, I don't know the name of the city, but here he took bath in Ganges. And Nagaloka, the queen or the princesses of Nagloka, they kidnapped him. They took him to Nagloka, inside water, underwater. First he didn't understand, but when he went to Nagloka, he understood. Princesses kidnapped me, and then one princess, Ulupi, was very much attracted to him. So Arjun ended up marrying Ulupi, but he said, I cannot take you with me. So you remain here in Nagloka. Then he came out and he went to places of pilgrimage. He went to Prayagraj also. Then he went further east and he went to Manipur side. So there, I believe he defeated a demon or killed a demon, and then the princess of that kingdom, Chitrangada, it was offered that he should marry her. So he married her, but the condition was the king there said, we have a curse that we cannot have a son. But now since she is married to you, she will have a son. So our request is you leave Chitrangada here and her son will become the king of Manipur. So Arjun said, so okay. So he left him there. And I believe his name was Babruvan. And then he went towards South India and he married one princess there. And then on the way back, he was coming back. So he went to Prabhas Kshetra. So by now, because he was going to all the places of pilgrimage, he had long beard, long matted hair. He was pretty much looking like a renunciate. Krishna came to know that Arjun has come, and Krishna came outside Dwarka to meet Arjun, to welcome him. Because it's all Krishna's plan, whatever he wants to do, that's what happens. So Krishna came and Krishna said, Arjun, you come in, but you come in as a renunciant. Take a tridanda staff, it's mentioned here also, carrying a tridandi. Why? Because he explained that Balramji wants to get Subhadra married to Duryodhana, but I want you to marry her. So he said, Krishna said, I cannot openly go against Balramji's wishes, but you come in as a renunciant, and now Chaturmas will start and nobody will travel anywhere, so you remain here. And Balramji is very, very favorable towards Brahmins, and he invites them to his palace and he feeds them nicely. And Subhadra is staying with Balramji in his palace, and she also helps him feeding all the sannyasis. And she will get attracted to you and we'll make some arrangement later on. So Arjun said, okay. And somehow Krishna's Yogamaya, nobody recognized Arjun. So Arjun was staying in wherever the quarters were for the sannyasis, and Balramji would invite him for prasadam, and Subhadra would serve him, and Subhadra was getting attracted to Arjun. But because looking at Arjun, she understood he is not a sannyasi. He's such a heavily built, strongly built person, and look at his arms and his shoulders and his muscles. So it is somebody else, but she was getting attracted to him. And then it was the last day of Chaturmasya, and Krishna told Subhadra that I have a very good proposal for you. Arjun is here, so why don't you marry him? And Subhadra said, well, I'm getting attracted to this sannyasi. You're talking about Arjun. And Krishna then laughed. He said, well, that is Arjun only. Then Subhadra understood why she was getting attracted to that sannyasi. And then Krishna told Subhadra and Arjun that Subhadra, that tomorrow is that end of this Chaturmasya period, and then there'll be a festival in Ravatak Hill, and then you go there for puja, and all the yadus will not be prepared, that they'll be busy in festivities, so Arjun will come and kidnap you. And he will take you to Hastinapur. So this is the background, and let's see what happens now. Text 4. Tatra varsitan masam avatsita swartha sadhaka paura sabhajito abhikshanam ramena janatas chasa. He stayed there during the monsoon months to fulfill this purpose. Lord Balram and the other residents of the city, not recognizing him, offered him all honor and hospitality. Ekada grihe maniya atithena nimantritam shraddhyopaharitam bhaksyam balen bubuje kila. One day Lord Balram brought him to his home as his invited dinner guest, and Arjun ate the food the Lord respectfully offered him. So from the explanation of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it is understood that Arjun in a sannyasi role had just finished the 4-month vows of the rainy season and could now again accept general invitations from householders. Thus, no one would have suspected any unusual motive in his visiting Lord Balram at this time. So apashyat tatra mahatim kanyam veera manoharam priti utfulekshanas tasyam bhavakshubdham manodadhe. There he saw the wonderful maiden Subhadra, who was enchanting to heroes. His eyes opened wide with delight, and his mind became agitated and absorbed in thoughts of her. Sapitam chakme vikshya narina hridayangamam hasanti vridita pangi tanyasta hridayakshanam. Arjun was very attractive to women, and as soon as Subhadra saw him, she wanted to have him as her husband. Smiling bashfully with sidelong glances, she fixed her heart and eyes upon him. As soon as she saw him, Subhadra knew that Arjun was no sannyasi, but rather her destined consort. And Krishnamurti Prabhupada writes, Arjun, the grandfather of Maharaj Parikshit, was himself extraordinarily beautiful, and his bodily structure was very attractive to Subhadra, who decided within her mind that she would accept only Arjun as her husband. As a simple girl, she was smiling with great pleasure looking at Arjun. Tam param samanudhyayan antaram prepsur Arjuna alevesham brahma chitta kamin nati baliyasa. Meditating only on her and waiting for the opportunity to take her away, Arjun had no peace. His heart trembled with passionate desire. Even while being honored by Lord Balram, Arjun was too distracted to appreciate the Lord's gracious hospitality. Arjuna's distraction and Lord Balram's failure to recognize Arjun in his disguise were both arrangements of the Supreme Lord to enjoy his transcendental pastimes. Mahatyam Deva Yatrayam Tathastham Durga Nirgatam Jahara No Matah Pitro Krishnasya Cha Maharatha. Once, on occasion of a great temple festival in honor of the Supreme Lord, Subhadra rode out of the fortress-like palace on a chariot, and at that time, the mighty chariot warrior Arjun took the opportunity to kidnap her. Subhadra's parents and Krishna had sanctioned this. It wasn't really a kidnapping. Only Balramji didn't know. Yasudevji, Devaki, Krishna, they all knew and sanctioned this. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur identifies this festival as the annual Rath Yatra for Lord Vishnu on the occasion of his rising from mystic sleep at the end of Chaturmasya. Subhadra's parents are Vasudeva and Devaki. Rathastu dhanuradaya shurashcharun dhato bhatam vidrave kroshatam swanam subhagam mrigaradeva. Standing on his chariot, Arjun took up his bow and drove off the valiant fighters and palace guards who tried to block his way. As her relatives shouted in anger, he took Subhadra away, just as a lion takes his prey from the midst of lesser animals. So this kidnapping of girls before marriage and then marrying her off, it's not new. Tachrutva kshubhito Rama paryaniva maharanava grihita pada krishnena suhrid bhishchanu sansita. When he heard of Subhadra's kidnapping, Lord Balram became as disturbed as the ocean during the full moon. But Lord Krishna respectfully took hold of his feet and together with other family members pacified him by explaining the matter. Prahinot pari barmahani var vadvaur muda bala mahadhanotas karebha rathashva naryoshita. Lord Balram then happily sent the bride and groom very valuable wedding gifts consisting of elephants, chariots, horses, and male and female servants. So somehow Balramji was very, very angry. How dare Arjun come here and kidnap my sister? How did he do that? How dare he do that? So he and other Yadav warriors, they were getting ready to go and attack Arjun and Arjuna's chariot. And Krishna was sitting there quietly smiling. And Balramji said, why are you smiling? Why are you quiet? Then Krishna explained that it was Subhadra also wanted to marry Arjun. She did not she didn't want to marry Duryodhana, but you were forcing. So Arjun kidnapped her, and they both were attracted to each other. And even before this kidnapping happened, what Krishna did, he sent a messenger to Hastinapur asking for approval of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And Yudhishthira Maharaj sent back, yes, we approve this wedding. So there was no, outwardly, there was no cause for Balramji getting angry. And then Balramji got convinced, and then they sent messengers to Arjun, because going by chariot is slower than going by just by horses. So the messengers came, they brought back Arjun and Subhadra to Dwarka, and where the proper wedding happened, and then Balramji and everybody, they sent off Subhadra happily with all these valuable wedding gifts consisting of elephants, chariots, horses, male, female servants. So some twists, some turns are always there. So then, this narration ends here. Then another pastime starts now. Shri Shukvacha Krishnasya Dvijashveshta Shrutadev iti Shruta Krishna Bhaktya Purnartha Shanta Kavirlampata. Shukdev Goswami continued. There was a devotee of Krishna known as Shrutadev, who was a first-class Brahman, perfectly satisfied by rendering unalloyed devotional service to Lord Krishna. He was peaceful, learned, and free from sense gratification. Sovach videheshu mithilayam grihashrami aniyagata harya nirvartita nijakriyaha. Living as a religious householder in the city of Mithila. Within the kingdom of Videha, he managed to fulfill his obligations while maintaining himself with whatever sustenance easily came his way. So Shrutadev, wonderful Brahman devotee in Mithila. Yatra matram tva hara hara devad upanam atyuta nadikam tavata tushta kriya chakre yathochitaha. By the will of providence, he obtained each day just what he needed for his maintenance and no more. Satisfied with this much, he properly executed his religious duties. An ideal Vaishnava Brahman, even if encumbered by the ties of family life, should work only as hard as required to meet his obligations. Without being unnecessarily agitated for material advancement, he should devote the best part of his time and assets to his higher duties in the Supreme Lord's service. If a householder can succeed in this program, despite the unavoidable difficulties of this degraded age, he can expect Lord Krishna's personal attention, as will be seen in the case of Shrutadev, the perfect Brahman of Mithila. So he was completely satisfied with whatever he could get. And then rest of the time, he would do his other obligations, religious duties. तथा तद्राष्ट्र पालो अंग बहुलाश्वैति श्रुतः मैथिलो निर्हम्मान उभाव्य अपि अचित्तो प्रियो. Similarly, free from the false ego was a ruler of that kingdom, my dear Parikshit, a descendant of Mithil dynasty named Bahulashva. Both these devotees were very dear to Lord Achyuta. So on one side there was a Brahman, poor Brahman, completely satisfied. And on one side there's Bahulashva, who's a ruler of kingdom. And Krishna was very dear, and they were very dear to Krishna. Tayo prasanno Bhagavan darukena hritam ratham aruya sakam munubhir videhan prayayo prabhu. Pleased with both of them, the Supreme Personality of God had mounted his chariot, which Daruk had brought, and traveled to Videha with a group of sages. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that Shrutadev and Bahulashva were unable to travel to Dwarka to see Krishna because both of them had vowed to regularly worship the personal deity at home. Shri Krishna was very glad to go out of his way to give them both his audience, and while leaving Dwarka, he insisted that the sages who wanted to come with him should join him on his chariot, because otherwise they would exhaust themselves following on foot. Renowned sages would ordinarily never even consider traveling in such an opulent conveyance, but on the Lord's order, they put aside their natural aversion and joined him on his chariot. Narado Vamadevo Attri Krishna Ramo Asito Aruni Aham Brihaspati Kanamo Maitreyash Chevan Adaya. Among these sages were Narad, Vamadev, Atri, Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas, Parashuram, Asit, Aruni, myself. Myself means Shukdev Goswami. Brihaspati, Kanva, Maitreya, and Chevan. So all these sages, along with Krishna, they went to Mithila. Tatra tamayantam pavarajanapadan upatasthu sardehasta griha suryam egoditam. In every city and town, the Lord passed along the way, O king. The people came forward to worship him with offering of arghya water in their hands, as if to worship the rising sun surrounded by planets. So Krishna with the sages, he was like sun among different planets. Anartha dhanva kuru jangalakam lankamas mastya panchal kuntim madhu kekeya koshalarana anye chatanmukh sarojamudar hasa snigdhekshanam nrip apur drishibhinnaryam. The men and women of Anartha, Dhanva, Kurujang, Kank, Matsya, Panchal, Kunti, Madhu, Keke, Koshal, Arana, and many other kingdoms drank with their eyes the nectarian beauty of Lord Krishna's lotus-like face, which was graced with generous smiles and affectionate glances. Tebhya savikshana vinishtitam isridrigbhaya kshemam trilok gururartha darisham chayachan shanvandi ganta dhavalam swayasho ashubham geetam surera nirebhir agachanakar videha. Simply by glancing at those who came to see him, Lord Krishna, the spiritual master of the three worlds, delivered them from the blindness of materialism. As he thus endowed them with fearless and divine vision, he heard demigods and men singing his glories, which purify the entire universe and destroy all misfortune. Gradually, he reached Videha. Srila Jiva Goswami raises the logical question of how the ordinary people along the path could even see the Lord, since not only were their eyes covered by ignorance, but the Lord's chariot was traveling faster than the wind. Supplying the answer, Lord Shijiva indicates that Krishna's special glance of mercy empowered every one of them with the devotional purity required for entering into his association. Otherwise, he would have remained outside the scope of their power to see. As he himself states in his instruction to Uddhav, I can be perceived only by devotion. So, only by Krishna's mercy, since he saw the eagerness of people to come and worship him or see him, he reciprocated and gave them the mercy. So they could see Krishna, and at the same time get benefited. Te achyutam praptam akaranya paura janapada nripa abhiyurmuditas tasmai grihitar hana panaya. Hearing the Lord Achyuta had arrived, O king, the residents of the cities and villages of Videha joyfully came forth to receive him with offerings in their hands. Drishva tatta uttama shlokam priti ut fulanashaya karadhitanjali bhirnemo shrut purva satha muni. As soon as the people saw Lord Uttam Shloka, their faces and hearts blossomed with affection. Joining their palms above their heads, they bowed down to the Lord and to the sages accompanying him, whom they had previously only heard about. Swanugrihaya sampraptam manuano tam jagat gurum mathila shruta devascha padyo petatu prabhu. Both the king of Mithila and Shrutadev fell at the Lord's feet, each thinking that the spiritual master of the universe had come there just to show him mercy. Niyamantrayetam dasharham atithena sahadvijah mathila Shrutadevascha yugapata samahatanjali. At exactly the same time, King Mathil and Shrutadev each went forward with joined palms and invited the Lord of the Dasharas to be his guest, along with the Brahman sages. So both of them went forward and invited. Bhakwanstadabhipretya dvayo priyachakirshaya ubhyo ravishad geham ubhabhyam tadalakshitaha. Wanting to please them both, the Lord accepted both their invitations. Thus he simultaneously went to both homes, and neither could see him entering the other's house. So according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Krishna visited Shrutadev and Bahulashva at the same time by manifesting himself in duplicate forms, along with the sages. So all the sages also got duplicate forms. Thus King Bahulashva thought that Lord Krishna had come only to his house, leaving Shrutadev to return home disappointed. while Shrutadev believed that just the reverse was the case. Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna and his companions were present in both houses. Although both the Brahman and the king thought he was present in one house only, is another opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This opulence is described in the revealed scriptures as Vaibhav Prakash. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 wives, he expanded himself into 16,000 forms, each one of them as powerful as he himself. Similarly, in Vrindavan, when Brahma stole Krishna's calves and cowherd boys, Krishna expanded himself into many new calves and boys that we studied in the Brahma Vimohan Leela chapter. Shantanapyat Tanduraja Janaka Swagrihagat Ani Preshasa Snagreshu Sukhasinan Mahanana Pravrid Bhaktya Uddharsha Hridyasra Vilekshana Tattva Tadangrin Prakshalya Tadpo Lokapavani Sakutumbo Bahanamurdna Pujyam Chakrishvara Gandhamalyambara Kalpa Dhupa Dipardhya Govrisha. When King Bahulashva, descendant of Janak, saw Lord Krishna approaching his house from a distance with the sages, who were somewhat fatigued from the journey, he immediately arranged to have seats of honor brought out for them. After they all were comfortably seated, the wise king, his heart overflowing with joy and his eyes clouded by tears, bowed down to them and washed their feet with intense devotion. Taking the wash water, which could purify the entire world, he sprinkled it on his head and the heads of his family members. Then he worshipped all those great lords by offering them fragrant sandalwood paste, flower garlands, fine clothing, and ornaments, incense, lamps, arghya, and cow and bulls. Prabhupada explains, Bahulashva, the king of Videha, was very intelligent, was a perfect gentleman. He was astonished that so many great sages, along with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were personally present in his home. He knew perfectly well that conditioned souls engaged in worldly affairs cannot be 100% pure, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees are always transcendental to worldly contamination. Therefore, when he found that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and all the great sages were at his home, he was astonished. And he began to thank Lord Krishna for his causeless mercy. So wonderfully, he welcomed Krishna and all the sages. Vacha madhuraya prinam idam ahannatar pita Padavankagato Vishnu Sansprishan Chankaramata. When they had eaten to the full satisfaction, for the further pleasure, the king began to speak slowly and in a gentle voice as he held Lord Vishnu's feet in his lap and happily massaged them. Shri Bahulashva Vacha Bhavan hi Sarva Bhutana Atma Sakshi Swadrik Vibho Atha Nastvat Padam Bhojam Smartam Darshanam Gataha. Shri Bahulashva said, O Almighty Lord, you're the soul of all created beings, their self-will mind, witness, and now you're giving your audience to us who constantly meditate on your lotus feet. Svavachastad dhritam kartum asmad drig gocharo bhavan yadatha kanta bhaktanme nanantaha Shri Rajaha Priya. You have said, neither Ananta, Goddess Shri, nor unborn Brahma is dearer to me than my unalloyed devotee. To prove your own words true, you have now revealed yourself to our eyes. Ko nutva charanam bhojam evam vidhi srajeta pamana nishkinchananam shantanam muninam yasvamatmataha. What person who knows this truth would ever abandon your lotus feet when you're ready to give your very self to peaceful sages who call nothing their own? Yovatire yadoravanshe nirnam sansaratam iha yashovitene tachantya trilokya vrijinapaham. Appearing in the Yadu dynasty, you have spread your glories, which can remove all the sins of the three worlds, just to deliver those entrapped in the cycle of birth and death. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Krishnaya Kuntamedase Naranaya Rishaye Sushantam Tapiyushe. Obeisances to you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, whose intelligence is ever unrestricted. Obeisances to the sage Naranarayan, who always undergo austerities in perfect peace. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the king offered these prayers to encourage Lord Krishna to remain at his home for some days. King thought, since contact with the Supreme Lord can free anyone from misconceptions and doubts, Krishna's presence in my home will certainly fortify my intelligence so that I can withstand the onslaughts of material desires. Dinani katichit bhuman grihanno nivas dvijah sameta pada rajasa punihidam nime kulam. Please stay a few days in our house, along with these Brahmins, all pervading one, and with the dust of your feet sanctify this dynasty of Nimi. Iti upamantrito ragya bhagwan loka bhavana vasa kurvana kalyanam mithila nara yoshitam. Shukdev Goswami said, thus invited by the king, the Supreme Lord, sustainer of the world, consented to stay for some time to bestow good fortune on the men and women of Mithila. Shrutadevo achyutam praptam savgrihan janko yatha nattva munina susamtishto dhunvan vaso nanartaha. Shrutadev received Lord Achyuta into his home with as much enthusiasm as that shown by King Bahlashva. After bowing down to the Lord and sages, Shrutadev began to dance with great joy, waving his shawl. Which means he was in so much of ecstasy. Krishna, first of all, came to his house with all the sages, and then he agreed to stay for a few days. Shrutadev, Bahulashva, now he went, now the story of Shrutadev. So Shrutadev, he didn't have anything in his house. He couldn't welcome Krishna the way Bahulashva could. And so he just was so ecstatic. He just started to dance with joy, waving his shawl. Karinapita vrishi shvetan aniteshu paveshasa swagate na abhinandyangrin sabharya avanijay muda. After bringing mats of grass and darva straw, seating his guests upon them, he greeted them with words of welcome. Then he and his wife washed their feet with great pleasure. So to provide even this simple welcome, Shrutadev had to go next door to his neighbors and borrow extra mats. This insight is provided by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Tadambasa mahabhaga atmanam sagrihan vayam sanapyam chakru udvarsho labdha sarva manorathan. With the wash water, the virtuous Shrutadev copiously sprinkled himself, his house and his family. Overjoyed, he felt that all his desires had now been fulfilled. Falarahano shira shiva mritam bhubhya mrida surabhya tulasi kusham bhuya aradhya masa yathopapannaya saparaya sattva vibardhana nandasa. He worshipped them with offerings of auspicious items easily available to him, such as fruits, ushira root, pure nectarian water, fragrant clay, tulsi leaves, kusha grass, and lotus flowers. Then he offered them food that increases the mode of goodness. So not as opulent worship as Maharaj Bahulashva could, but Krishna is pleased with both the worships. Satarkaya masa kuto mamanava bhuta grihand kupe patitasya sangama yasaro tirtha spad padarenu krishnena chasyatma niketa bhusura. He wondered, how is it that I, fallen into the blind well of family life, have been able to meet Lord Krishna? How I have also been allowed to meet these great Brahmins who always carry the Lord within their hearts. Indeed, the dust of the feet is a shelter of all holy places. Supavishtan kritatityan Shutadev upastita Sabharya Swajanapatya Vachang Kriya. When his guests were seated comfortably, having each received a proper meal, Shutadev approached them and sat down nearby with his wife, children, and other dependents. Then, while massaging the Lord's feet, he addressed Krishna and the sages. Shrutadeva vacha nadya no darshanam prapta param param purusha yarahidam shakti srishma pravishto hi atma sattaya. Shrutadev said, "It is not that we have attained the audience of the Supreme Person only today, for we have in fact been associating with him ever since he created this universe with his energies and then entered it in his transcendental form. Yatha Shayana Purusho Manasevatma Mayaya Srishva Lokam Param Swapnam Anuvishyav Abhasate." The Lord is like a sleeping person who creates a separate world in his imagination and then enters his own dream and sees himself within it. That's a nice way of putting his creation, how he creates. Shanvatam Gadatam Shashvad Archatam Twabhivandatam Shana Sambhadatamantara Hriddhi Bhasyam Alatmanam. You reveal yourself within the hearts of those persons of pure consciousness who constantly hear about you, chant about you, worship you, glorify you, and converse with one another about you. Hridistho api ati durastha karma vikshipta chetasam atma shakte bhiragrayo api anti upet gunatmanam. But although you reside within the heart, you are very far away from those whose minds are disturbed by the entanglement in material world. Indeed, no one can grasp you by his material powers, for you reveal yourself only in the hearts of those who have learned to appreciate your transcendental qualities. So this is the only way we can invoke his mercy. Namostu te adhyatma vidam paratmane anatmane svatma vibhaktam rityave sakarana karaktingamiyushe swamayaya samvrita ruddha drishtaye. Let me offer my obeisances unto you. You are realized as a supreme soul by those who know the absolute truth, whereas in your form of time you impose death upon the forgetful souls. You appear both in your causeless spiritual form and in the created form of this universe, thus simultaneously uncovering the eyes of your devotees and obstructing the vision of the non-devotees. So this is how he reciprocates with the devotees and non-devotees. He obstructs the vision of non-devotees when they want to see him. But the devotees, he uncovers their eyes. Satvam shadi svabhrityanna kim deva karvamahe etadanto nirnam klesho yad bhavan nakshi gochara. O Lord, you are that supreme soul, and we are your servants. How shall we serve you, my Lord? Simply seeing you puts an end to all the troubles of human life. Shri Shukuvacha tad uktam iti upakaranya bhagavan pranatartiha grihitva panina panim prahasanstam uvachaha. Shri Shukdev Goswami said, after hearing Shrukadev speak these words of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who relieves his surrendered devotee's distress, took Shrukadeva's hand in his own and smiling spoke to him as follows. See, so loving Krishna is with his devotees. He took his Shrutadev's hand in his own, smilingly speaking. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Brahmaste Anugriharthaya Sampraptan Vidyamon Muchimani Sacharanti Maya Lokan Punanta Padarenuki. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Brahman, you should know that these great sages have come here just to bless you. They travel throughout the worlds with me, purifying them with the dust of their feet. So Srila Sridhar Swami explains that Lord Krishna thought Shrutadev had shown too much reverence to him and not enough to the sages, and thus he turned the Brahmins' attention to them. Deva kshetrani tirthani darshana sparshana archana shanah punanti kalena tad api arhatam ekshaya. One can gradually become purified by seeing, touching, and worshipping temple deities, places of pilgrimage, and holy rivers. But one can attain the same result immediately simply by receiving the glance of exalted sages. This is how important it is to worship and welcome the sages or the devotees. Brahmano janmana shreyam sarvesham praninam yaha tapsa vidyaya tushtya kimu matav kalaya yataha. By his very birth, the Brahman is the best of all living beings in this world. And he becomes even more exalted when he is endowed with austerity, learning, and self-satisfaction. What to speak of devotion to me? Nam Brahmanan me dayitam rupam eta chaturbhujam sarva vedamayo vipra sarva deva mayo hiyaham. Even my own four-armed form is no dearer to me than a Brahman. Within himself, a learned Brahman comprises all the Vedas, just as within myself, I comprise all the demigods. Such a bold statement by Krishna. And the same thing he said about the Brahmins when in the story of Maharaj Narik, when he had to take the form of a lizard, big lizard. So any offense committed towards Brahmins, it's taken very seriously by Krishna. Dushpragya avidit bhavam avajananti anasuyavam gurum mam vipramatmanam archad avidya drishtaya. Ignorant of this truth, foolish people neglect and enviously offend the learned Brahman, who being none different from me, is a spiritual master and very such. They consider worshipable only such obvious manifestations of divinity as my deity form. So they don't know how to behave towards the devotees. They only know how to worship the deity. Characharam idam vishvam bhava yavchasya hetava madrupani tite chetasya adhate viparo madikshaya. Because he has realized me, a Brahman is firmly fixed in the knowledge that everything moving and non-moving in the universe, and also the primary elements of its creation, are all manifest forms expanded from me. So he has a right vision, actually. Tasmad Brahma Rishi Netan Brahman Machridyarchaya Evam Chetarchito Asmyadha Nanyatha Bhuri Bhutibhi. Therefore, you should worship these Brahman sages, a Brahman with the same faith you have in me. If you do so, you will worship me directly, which you cannot do otherwise, even with offerings of vast riches. Shri Shukvacha Saitam Prabhu Nadishta Sah Krishnan Dvijottaman Aradhya Katma Bhavena Mathila Shapa Sadgatim. Shri Shukdev Goswami said, so instructed by his Lord with single-minded devotion, Shrutadev worshipped Shri Krishna and the topmost Brahmins accompanying him. And King Bahulashwar did the same. Thus both Shrutadev and King attained the ultimate transcendental destination. Evam subhakte uragan Bhagwan bhakta bhaktiman ushitva dishya sanmargam punaradvaravatim gata. O king, thus the personality of Godhead was devoted to his own devotees, stayed for some time with his two great devotees, Shrutadev and Bahulashwa, teaching them the behavior of perfect saints. Then the Lord returned to Dwarka. So Prabhupada says in Krishna book, the instruction we receive from this incident is that both King Bahulashwa and Shrutadev, the Brahman, were accepted by the Lord on the same level, because both were pure devotees. This is a real qualification for being recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because it has become the fashion of this age to be falsely proud of having taken birth, in the family of a Kshatriya or a Brahman, we see persons without any qualification other than birth claiming to be Brahman or Kshatriya or Vaishya. But as stated in the scriptures, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. In this age of Kali, everyone is born a Shudra. This is because there is no performance of the purificatory processes known as sanskaras, which begin from the time of mother's pregnancy and continue up to the point of individual's death. No one can be classified as a member of a particular caste, especially of a higher caste, simply by birthright. If one is not purified by the process of seed-giving ceremony, he is immediately classified among the Shudras, because only the Shudras do not undergo this purificatory process. But the devotees go further. The Vaishnavas are trained to become freed from the 4 kinds of sinful activities. One cannot be on the Brahminical platform without having these preliminary qualifications. And without being a qualified Brahman, one cannot become a pure devotee. But Krishna saw the devotion in both Shutadev and Bahulasha, and he reciprocated with them equally, and he gave them both pure devotion service. Thus ends the purpose to 10th canto, 86th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Arjun Kidnaps Subhadra and Krishna Blesses His Devotees. We'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, just a very, I would say it's a very basic question on Subhadra. We know that there were 8 brother sisters Krishna were earlier from Devaki and Vasudeva, and Subhadra was later born.
Yeah,
what was the story?
She was born in Dwarka.
From the same father mother, Devaki and Vasudeva?
From Devaki and Vasudeva, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.